Cool. Oh, Victoria, thank you so much for coming on to the Soulish podcast. It's such a privilege, honor, and pleasure to have you on as a guest. And I stumbled upon your Instagram. I'm sure it was because we have a mutual connection, my little brother, Aaron. I call him little because he's huge now and I'm the little one, but I'll call him little brother just to spite him if he sees this. But I think it's such a cool thing that it's such a small world. And I love that I stumbled on your Instagram because it's so body positive and you have such a really uplifting way of talking about health and how it's also connected to our mental and emotional health as well as spiritual. And I just love that you tie in all of those things with all of the different posts and messages that you put out and just how we need to honor the whole self, our whole person, our whole being. But I love that you also focus on the body because that is something that we all can easily tweak. We can add different things like turmeric and different things like that into our bodies to help support our immune system, our, the stress and anxiety and all of that we deal with on a daily basis. And so I just love what you do and love what the work that you produce, the content that you produce. And I had to hit you up for being a guest. And I'm so grateful that you said yes. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So I really wanted to get into, I love the most recent post that you did on April 12th. As of this recording, it says true health requires that we don't separate the mental and the physical. Stress depletes zinc levels in the body and increase copper in the body. This drains the body's energy and it may look like fatigue, brain fog, anxiety, and mood swings because everything is connected. And I just love that post because I had no idea.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's incredibly important because I feel like a lot of times, and I think a little bit like traditional medical communities know this because, they'll tell people will have chronic symptoms and they'll be like, I need some help. And sometimes they are just like, oh, well, here's some antidepressants, try not to stress less and get some more sleep. But I think definitely what we're missing is like practical tools. Like the older I got, the more I realized like, like there's a lot of stuff that we deal with in the day to day. And I don't think there's really much focus, whether it was at school, whether it was at home, or whether it was at church, on practical application and being able to deal with stress and anxiety in real life and trauma. I think it's a very much under addressed area, and giving people those tools and helping them to become a part of our day to day so that they're just second nature is really, really important to me, especially having kids and like raising the next generation. I'm like, this is not something we can let another generation go by without having these tools. Like, it's crucial.
So crucial. And speaking of your kids, oh my gosh, they are adorable. For all of you who are listening, if nothing else, bring yourself some joy and some warm fuzzies and go check out her adorable kids. They're so cute. Those cheeks, man, just get me.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, how did you get to where you are? Like, what led you to being curious with this and then to starting to dig in and dive deep and then share?
So much. I have always been the type of person, I see something I didn't know before, but it's an obvious improvement. I'm not the type of person that can like easily forget that. Like for the most part, I'm like an action taker. I'm like, I need to implement this. And so it was like very early college age when I first started learning about like product ingredients and just even using like safer ingredients on my body. As far as health goes, my biggest exposure to health had just been the fact that my mom had been diagnosed with congestive heart failure when I was
Mm.
in middle school. And so when she was diagnosed, her heart was functioning at like 20%, and now it's at 80%, which is considered normal functioning. But so when that happened with her, they just were like, have eat a low sodium diet. So that had her looking at labels. I remember being so frustrated as a kid because I feel like we would spend forever in the grocery aisles while my mom read labels. But of course, back
Yeah.
then, like she was just really looking for the sodium. But I guess the nice thing about that is the lower sodium foods are real foods and less processed foods. So for the most part, I ended up growing up with more real foods. My mom wasn't a really extensive cook. A lot of it ended up being like frozen veggies, and the meals always started with boiling a pot of water.
Yeah.
But I do feel like it did lay a lot of the foundation for today. And so I started to really clean up the products that I was using. And but the biggest thing is I was really picky about what we ate and the products we had in my home. But I was actually experiencing like really bad skin issues. And the
Mm.
worst of it was the fatigue, because the fatigue was so bad that I was like Googling my symptoms. I thought I had narcolepsy, which, according to the internet, isn't curable and you have to be on medication for the rest of your
Oh,
life. And I'm the type of person where I immediately am like, no. I'm like, I don't know what is causing me to be so dang tired all the time, but I don't accept that. And the frustrating part is I did feel like I was on my own because like my blood test results all came back normal.
yep.
And, I think it's so crazy how the field in itself, like the standard medical field, is like, someone comes in with a problem, maybe we run a few tests or whatever, but like if you don't figure out the answer, you have no information to give this person, it just like you fall through the gaps. Like
Yeah.
it truly is so important for an individual to be their own advocate, because a lot of times there isn't a person who is going to take a stand for you like you will for yourself.
Yep.
And so it was really my journey with my own health that made me want to study about everything health. And so I was able to take a lot, like as I was able to get my energy back and my life back, I, took a lot of that into what I help people with now. But then the coolest part about it was through my own journey of getting my health back. Because between the fatigue and everything, I was on the autoimmune spectrum. And so
Oh,
with getting my health back, what happened was everything that I had experienced personally and like everything that I had implemented, I was able to like confirm with science, which we don't always necessarily need science. But in today's day and age, it is really cool to be able to back up something by saying, they've studied it, we can prove that it works, we can prove it's important.
mhm.
Because people, we like data, we like facts, we like evidence, we want proof that somebody's been there on the same path before
Yep.
us, and that,
Yep.
if we pursue this, that it'll work for me too. So I think that was the coolest part about me pursuing further education was my entire experience. I could just see in black and white and why everything worked um, so well. So yeah, it was a combination of that, and I mean, it's the coolest thing in the world, especially functional blood chemistry. Just being
Mhm.
able to look at the exact same tests that you get from the doctor's office and seeing the normal lab ranges that they give you. And it's perfectly normal. But if you look at it from a functional perspective, it tells an entirely different story. And just learning that and being able to help clients with that in itself is life changing. So yeah, I love it. Like I feel like I've always been on the path to do this, but it really did kind of take my own issues that really like pushed me forward. So that's, I mean, I think is really important for all of us to be able to know and accept is that we truly were created so amazing and so wonderful. And the challenges that we're presented with, I truly believe that each and every one of us is equipped with everything we need to overcome them if we see it as an opportunity to do so, not necessarily as something that, life is throwing our way that's going to beat us down.
So true. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because I actually, what was it, like probably 2 to 3 years ago, I went and got my blood taken. I went actually to a functional medicine doctor, but within Stanford University and
Mhm.
Stanford Hospital healthcare system. And so they're kind of just breaking into the functional medicine world. Like they're pretty progressive compared to most uh, like I guess have been around for a long time hospitals that are not like specifically functional medicine, naturopathic care. And so they do offer like a couple functional medicine doctors, and finally got in with one, and still there was this resistance. Like here I am asking for a hormonal panel. Like I'm specifically coming in here today because I want to take my blood, but I want to do like a full on hormonal panel to see what is off. Why is it so hard to lose weight? Why am I fluctuating? Why do I feel the way I feel? Why is my body not responding the way it should be responding based off of my level of exercise and also what I'm eating? And so being super frustrated and figuring out or trying to figure out like what is off, and doing my own research and knowing kind of, well, I kind of understand like specifically these hormones are the ones that I need to look at. And I got pushback like, oh no, you don't need to be doing that. You can just go on birth control and,
Mm.
regulate, and you might fluctuate in weight. I'm like, well, that's why I'm coming though here. And like, that's
Mhm.
why I want to get this specific like hormonal panel done, because I don't want to fluctuate. I don't want to go on birth control just so that I can continue to fluctuate. It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
And that was, technically a functional medicine doctor, but within the healthcare system that has those parameters of like, no, we don't do this unless like she's pregnant, right? Then we run a whole hormonal panel to make sure everything's good and functioning right. And, she keeps the baby, right? Like they want to always check on the baby's health and your health as a mom. But when I'm not a mom, they're like, no, you don't need that. We can just put you on birth control and that should regulate you and you should be fine. Should.
Mm.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
totally get it where you're coming from as far as it's really hard in this day and age. And even when you are an advocate for yourself, sometimes, you still even like can run against the wall, so to speak. So I think it's really great the work that you do in that that modality or that service that you offer to people, of being able to look at their panels and see like from a functional medicine perspective what's off, because
Mhm.
it is totally different. I've even had, I think my mom, we went the naturopathic route because she was feeling a lot of inflammation in her body. And she actually went to this chick in the Bay Area that you put your hand on like this metal, it's like a flat metal hand, and you just put your
Yeah.
fingers on it. Do you know what I'm talking about? I have
Hmm.
no idea
Yeah,
what
like
that's
a
called.
biofeedback scan.
Yes. And it was the craziest thing because this lady could tell my mom everything without knowing like her whole medical history yet. But just even that, like pinging your body and the different organs, and she could see how they were responding. I'm just like, why don't we do this like in regular medicine? This is like the coolest tool ever. Like we
Yeah.
have all of these MRI machines, but we can't have that in the office. It's just cool that there's so many different things available, that are more on the naturopathic, not so invasive way. And you can kind of
Mhm.
see what your body's doing. So that's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and what I love about like biofeedback scans is because it measures like the energy and the frequency of the body parts and the organs and all of that, is it is going to pick up on things before a blood test will and those standard methods. So I love like
Oh, wow. I didn't know
combining
that.
those. A lot of times people can't afford to do both, but like if you can afford to look at it from an energetic perspective, and which technically I guess they call it like the physics. So technically it'd be like bioenergetic, and like blood tests and urine and saliva is the biochemical. And combining them is how you really get a thorough picture. So yeah,
Mind
and save
blown.
people a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
So Yeah, and that's the difference too, is with those normal lab ranges that all of these labs use and that people see when they get their test results back, is those numbers are based on the average population. And the average population is chronically sick nowadays. So that does nobody any good. So it's really, what's sad is like I've talked to so many women to where they can't get any answers. And it's not until there's full blown disease
Yep.
and you have to have surgery or an organ removed, or like it's basically a disaster, which is
Yep.
why a lot of times we call it sick care instead of health care, just because it shouldn't take that long to be able to pick up. We don't have to wait that long to pick up on those things anymore.
Yep. Yep. So true.
Mm.
So true. And we have so much available to us as well. Do you have any recommendations for people at least in the US, of people maybe that you follow that are either naturopathic doctors or functional medicine doctors that you love? Like, I love Dr. Will Cole. He's like one of my
Hmm.
favorites.
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely say him. Dr. Mark Hyman's a really good one. He posts consistently and regularly and a lot of stuff. Um, that's good for like the general population. Because that's the thing, is when we're looking on social media, it's like you can really only give tips for the general population. Like if you really want specifics and personalized care, you've got to get off social media and go see somebody.
Yeah.
Um, Dr. Jess, I think her name's just Dr. Jess MD, like her handle, but I know her last name starts with a P. She's a really good one, especially for like mold and Lyme and co-infections and different things like that.
Oh, wow.
Trying to think of who else off the top of my head.
I know. Sorry, that was on the spot.
That's okay. But those are some good ones.
Yeah, those are some good recommendations for people. Um, I know too that you've talked about body posture and how that is related to, like, even emotional health, or even how we view ourselves or what we're carrying, and that it's more than just like a posture issue of like, I work all day, but that it's actually something that it can be reflective of our emotional health, our mental health. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I think so. The coolest thing when I really studied the emotional to physical connection, um, because there have been so many people that have studied this like in depth, like this diagnosis is usually related to this or this, or like an issue in this area of the body is usually related to like these specific emotions, and trauma, all of that. And so a lot of times I do have to look them up, but I did notice a pattern of kind of like, if you think about the function of that body part, or if you decide to look it up and become aware of like what the specific function is of that area of the body, it usually correlates. Like, for
Mm,
instance, maybe like having major issues with parasites. A lot of times, like when we look at the emotional connection to that, we're like, well, what or who in your life maybe feels parasitic to you? If that makes sense. That's why, like with the
mhm.
back, a lot of times it's like feeling unsupported, because your back
Yep.
is meant to support you. So, I mean, that's a quick, easy way to kind of start to think about things. But I definitely, it's like, because of the way that these things do connect and affect us physically, um, I think what's important to remember, because I've noticed a lot of times it's like people can feel like they're on two ends of the spectrum. Like you
Mhm.
see people using, energy and frequencies and feeling like they only have to use energy and frequencies. And it's like, well, no, you still have to change what you're eating, right? You still have to find like tangible, effective, actionable ways to deal with your stress and process your emotions. Um, so yeah, I mean, they all affect each other, but then it's like we have to make sure we're addressing them just from both angles. We can't just be like, okay, I'm going to take my supplements, and then, maybe a lot of people don't really think about, energetics of our world. And even if people aren't really into energetics, they can just think of it as like, their emotional and stress management and all of
Yep.
that. But just like always, just those two areas, just every single day. One thing that I tell people that's super easy to implement is just, the same way that you brush your teeth and a lot of ideally move your body every single day, is just making sure that you do something for your, mental and physical health, like in the morning and at night, like at least twice a day, until it becomes more natural to you. Because I'm like, if you start having like a routine, or maybe you have to check it off at first, eventually it will come natural to you, and you'll be able to use whatever it is that is your favorite thing to use, like spontaneously, when you have a situation that's stressful in the middle of the day. Because
Yep.
you'll have, essentially, if you consider the morning and the night routine like practice for the big game, and the big game is that spontaneous, like, whoosh, I was just thrown a curveball. What do I do? You pull out the resources and everything that you have been practicing morning and night, and it's like it's a whole different ball game. And you can apply it to so many areas of your life, whether it's having a calmer response to your children when they throw a tantrum, or whether it's,
Mhm.
having a different response in traffic or the grocery store, or just like a million different scenarios. It doesn't even matter what it is if you
Yep.
practice. So that's the coolest part about it. And it truly does change everything. Like, it affects every area of your life, right? It's going to improve your
Mhm.
relationships if you're
Mhm.
less irritable and moody. And um, so, yeah, I mean, it's the coolest thing in the world. So, what the two like little things I like to do is definitely making sure that you're activating your vagus nerve in some areas. So, my
Hmm.
favorite ways are like singing and dancing, breath work, and meditation. But there's so many different ways. That's why people who like follow Wim Hof, for example, get in the cold
Yeah.
ice baths. And,
Yeah.
that's a great way to activate your vagus nerve. And I do like to go to on walks in the cold, and little things like that. So I always just say, pick your favorite. Pick something that really resonates to you. There's no point in picking something that you're going to dread doing. Like I had somebody who, she's like, I just really can't get into meditation. She's like, but I love singing and humming. And I'm like, that's it. That activates your vagus nerve. That's the perfect thing for you to make sure you're just consistently, regularly doing. Like, just make sure you make time for it, 30 minutes twice a day. Like, and you enjoy it anyway. And you know that you're doing your body good. And then another thing is really having a reflective period, like at the end of every day, and maybe picking something that you want to choose to celebrate, like just about yourself and how awesome you were, and whether you choose to look back on a situation where you know you maybe didn't handle it as well as you could, and just reflecting on, like, what you were feeling, what was going on in the moment, how you, and I honestly, what's been really key for me is I will literally practice. And you can do this with kids too. Like, if you're a parent, like not in the moment when they're super emotional, but before bed, before they're about to go to sleep, like, go with them and help them practice. Like, the next time you're really frustrated, I tell my daughter, I was like, honey, well, what were you feeling when you pushed your brother? Or she's like, I was feeling sad and frustrated. And I'm like, okay, well, the next time you're feeling sad and frustrated, what can we do instead? And like, especially, kids have really good imaginations, but even as an adult, you
Mhm.
can visualize, like, and I'll ask people, like, visualize yourself responding the way that you want to respond, and then do it until it feels good. Do it until you can really, truly see yourself actually implementing that next time. And it's the coolest thing ever. Like, the next time you need it, you're just like, I literally will be like, oh my gosh, I practiced for this. It's like,
I've been
and it's
working on this
amazing.
for months.
Yeah. And the way that affects, our body's stress response, and not going into that stress response or being in it for a shorter amount of time, means that our body is able to recover faster and has a better stress adaptation response, which a lot of times we just don't really have a very good one at all. And it may not even be your fault. Like you may have been passed on, like because trauma gets trapped and it can be
Hmm.
passed on from generation to generation. Like your reactions and the way you respond to things, right? That's why you say like mother like daughter, like,
Hmm.
like
It's
father like
taught
son.
too. Yep.
Right. Yeah. You could say like it may not be your fault, but if you can become self-aware and recognize it, you can completely change that trajectory for yourself and for the next generation. And it's the coolest thing. It makes me like geek out so much. I'm like, this is the stuff, you know, that matters. Like this
Yeah.
is what makes up a beautiful life. Like it, who cares, yeah, I like a cute outfit and, like living in a pretty
And that
house. But when it's
necklace,
all
girl,
said and
that
done,
necklace. Your
yeah,
hats too, man. I almost wore a hat just for you. And I was like, no, that
really.
just makes my head look even bigger with
Oh
this
my gosh,
with
that's
this
so
hair.
funny.
But I love your
Yeah,
hats. Yeah.
thank you. I'm like, when it's all said and done, like, even if people don't say how much they appreciate you every day or every
Yep.
moment, like, when people are gone, that's when we're really reflective and we're going to be
Hmm.
like, wow, my mom really taught me how to be calm and loving in difficult situations. Or, that teacher, the way that she helped me walk through my test anxiety, how to perfect, and took the time to help me build this resilience, that had a profound impact on my life. And it's like, we, especially in this day and age of social media, it can be easy to glamorize big things and something that feels post worthy. And sometimes the
Hmm.
little things don't feel social media worthy, but they're the ones they add up. They really do. And
Yeah.
I think that's why it can be so easy to get sidetracked because you're like, oh, well, my pain's still here. It's not improving right now. And the weight's not leaving right now. And um, but if you can just like see yourself later on down the line and how all those little things add up, like you begin to appreciate them more and more. And it helps you to be more present in your daily life, which is so important. Like, I know a lot of times, like, I found myself one time, I was like, I get, I feel like, whatever you want to call it, spirit, Holy Spirit, whatever you believe. But a lot of times I feel like I'll, just get this like inkling to do something. So one time I was sitting at home, it was a Saturday, and I feel like something that I have been really working on is moving away from like hustle and like do.
Hmm.
Um, because that has always just been a part of me, which I think is I feel like there's a lot of reasons. I feel like sometimes you could be avoiding something, or I think a lot of times, well, like I say with the body, is, um, or even like emotions and things, like a lot of times I say like the wires have been crossed,
Hmm.
like maybe the way that I identify and what my identity is rooted in is wrong because the wires have been crossed. Like the way that I think that love equals isn't actually what it does. So the
Hmm.
wires have been crossed. So I think a lot of times like do and like, oh, I checked this off my list today and I worked really, really hard, can become an identity and like a way of being and make us feel like some sort of significance. Because it used to be so bad that I would like get mad at my husband for sitting.
Hmm.
Like if I was like cleaning or doing something and like my kids and my husband were like relaxing on the couch, I'd be like, what are you doing?
Get up.
What do you mean? You're just sitting there? What is this concept? This doesn't make any sense to me. Get up. um, so yeah, I remember I had this like it was like a Saturday and I was relaxing. And I remember I heard this voice was like, put your phone down. So I put my phone down and I just sat there and I was like, this is weird. But in that moment, I realized I was like, oh my gosh,
Mm.
I need to learn how to be present. And so I just like watched my kids play and enjoyed it. And I started like just like little moments, just starting to like be there and like,
Mhm.
and I literally just like, I'm like, wow, you know, um, especially growing up because I always wanted to big dreams and like make an impact. And now that I'm older, I feel like my idea of big dreams and make an impact is like be fully present in whatever I'm doing. So
Mhm. Yep.
whether it's being with my family or whether it's working my business, just whatever you're doing, just be present in that. And it's actually I it's not something that we're used to doing. Like it feels like a
Yeah.
foreign concept.
Yeah.
And I know it's uncomfortable for a lot of people, and some people might hear that and they'll be like, just sit, just do nothing.
Just
And I get it, but
yeah.
I would encourage everybody to try because we really are, technology overloaded, information
Yep.
overloaded, and that's affecting our nervous systems and throwing them out of whack every single
Yep.
day.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, and everything's connected. And I know a lot of times people, I think I hear a lot is, you know, either people feel like, well, everything's bad for me. And first of all, no. But the things the things that are the way that I approach that is I say that, well, your body was created brilliant. And I like to like
Yep.
re-educate people and remind people how brilliant and amazing their body is, like how
Yep.
it knows how to give you a fever when you have a virus because it knows that you need
Yep.
that heat in order to kill
Yep.
the virus. And just little things like that to encourage people, like your body knows
It's
what to
crazy.
do. There's little ways that it has been. It sends signals all the time. Like I don't have to think about breathing right now. I don't have to tell my joint to connect so I can bend my arm. Like if we really think about it, the body is brilliant. And so it does know how to detox toxins and things. And of course, that doesn't
Yep.
mean eat 10 hot
Yep.
dogs a day. Of course, we have to be diligent, but we also don't have to be afraid if we're doing the things that enable our body to be able to protect and defend us like it was designed to do, because it was.
Yep.
And then the other part is a lot of times people get overwhelmed because they're like, well, I just don't know what to do. And the two things I say about that is, well, start with something, right? The mental and the physical, morning and evening, whatever it is, pick your favorites,
Yep.
start implementing it. But I also
Yep.
say it's important to work with your brain. It's important to understand. So whether you're a student and you feel like you can't understand the material the first try, or whether you're somebody who's wanting to incorporate healthy habits, this applies to you. The
Yep.
fact of the matter is, as our bodies are brilliant, we're able to create neural pathways, but it takes some time. So if at first you struggle to change your habits, that's normal because your body has all of these patterns and all of these pathways and it's used to a certain thing. So when you do try to change, you're gonna get like alarm bells and all of this roadblocks. They're like, whoa, hold up. I know what you're doing here, but we don't like it. And that's normal. And so if you just understand that you need to work through at least maybe like 2 months of that, Dr. Caroline Leaf says, I heard an interview with her, and I think the girl's Instagram is the Brain Coach, and they
Mhm.
said
I
they're
love
studying
her.
in their personal experience. It was 63 to 66 days to create new neural pathways. So I'm like, if
Wow.
people just knew, like, if you stick with it that long, you will have at least, and you're consistent, you'll
Yep.
have at least given your body and your brain the information that it needs to make it easier for you.
Yep.
And you are created to be able to make things easier for you after you've been consistent. So, one example is like if you move to a new neighborhood or if you start a new job, if you're like me, you have to use GPS because I don't know directions. And so if I'm using GPS, I'll, use it until one day I'm going to get in the car maybe on the 67th day. Who knows? I've never actually tracked it. But I'll get in a car and I'm not going to have to put in my thing. It's like muscle memory, brain memory, whatever you want to call it. Your body, it memorizes it. So if you think about that, like the fact that it memorizes your route to your house or your job or the gym, like think about all of the stuff it can memorize as far as trauma and emotions and all of that goes. So I
Yeah.
think when we're educated on our bodies, it really helps us to be able to make some changes. Because I think a lot of times
Hmm.
we're even missing the information we need to believe that, my body can heal and I can get better, and anxiety and depression or heart disease, whatever the case may be, doesn't have to run in my family, and it can end with me because I'm equipped with what I need and I'm knowledgeable enough to be able to have the tools to completely transform the trajectory of my family.
Hmm.
And it's
Hmm.
pretty powerful and it's so cool. So yeah,
It's
that's
really
my long
empowering.
answer. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but it's really empowering when you realize I'm not a victim. And when we step out of that victim mentality and realize, no, we actually can really determine a whole lot. I mean, there's epigenetics is saying the same thing, right? Like there's so many things out there that we can learn from and learn about, and that can really just enable us and empower us to realize we're not a victim to our bodies, our body type, like all of that. We can actually turn on certain genes and turn off other genes that would cause diabetes or heart disease or anything like that, and we can actually prevent it from or prolong health and live longer. So
Mhm.
there's a lot to unpack there. When you were talking, I had this thought about the stress, the level of stress that we deal with, and especially with everything going on in our society and our culture, what we're dealing with on the current health crisis and things like that. There's a lot of stress, and we already had a lot of stress before 2020, and
Mhm.
2020 has caused a lot more. And then it's also, I think people have naturally, because this is how we are, is we naturally find whatever we need to do to offset the stress. So like I think at the beginning, I think it's Ryan Heffington, and he's based in LA. He's an LA dancer. He's done like videos for Sia and all that. He was doing
Mhm.
like a free like dance party on like Wednesday mornings, and I think he did it multiple days, but I would join just every Wednesday. And I knew that was like my day. That was an hour during lunchtime that I was just going to dance and be silly in my own apartment where no one could see me. And I mean, he was like, go grab something from your closet, like, and so you'd like run, okay, and run to your closet and grab like a scarf or something. And then you just like dance with it, like all these different dance moves that he had. So much fun. So I think there's things like that we can do to like offset, and whether that's like a mini little dance party, or for me it's become a religious experience, is baths. I moved into Denver just like a couple weeks ago. I have the best bathtub I've ever had in my life. I use it like every night. But doing things like that just help to offset. But I wanted to ask you, as far as like the fight or flight response, and you were talking about kind of prepping yourself and visualizing, is there any other things that we can do to help that? Because usually the fight and flight comes not when you're expecting it to. Usually it's something that's like a surprise that really like you're put on the spot, kind of like, oh my gosh, you have to get up on stage and sing, all of a sudden, and you weren't prepared, you don't have a song, you didn't practice, you don't even sing. So it's like
Mhm.
that feeling of like, oh my god. And is there anything we can do, maybe add to our routine other than anything you've mentioned, that could possibly help with that?
Yeah, actually, so I did a certification with heart math, and they studied the heart and the brain connection, which is actually really, really important. And they talk about how the brain or the heart is what actually sends more signals. Okay. And what I love about this, I'm going to get super vulnerable here,
I love
but
it.
this is another one of those like science things that's studied that I was able to like confirm after my personal experience. I talked about this on my stories, I think last year, but um, I would say, mm, never mind. I'll forget the timeline because I'm not exactly sure. But I would say for a little bit, it like the dynamics in our home were like super tense.
Mm,
And it was during all of that that I really started to grow even more, because in the past, I would just have, whatever, succumbed to whatever instinct or whatever I had, but I started to respond differently. And not that I'm perfect, but for me, this was a testimony of how when you have heart changes, so I guess this is like the emotional and mental of it, but like when you have heart changes, like not only does it change things like for your world, but it influences other people. Um,
mm,
so I really started to just work on my own personal growth and not like obsess over my marriage or what was going to happen in it. And one day, my husband said something and I was like, well, what's gotten into you? And he was like, well, I want to have a good marriage. And so, I mean, we don't have a perfect marriage, but I will definitely say like today being married over 7 years, like we are more in love
wow.
than ever. Um, and that was like my first testament of how I just think we're a lot of times conditioned to think that other people are the problem.
Yeah.
Um, but when we
Yep.
can start with me and say, well, where can I improve, that the condition of our heart really does affect the people in our atmosphere, just
Yep.
um, because we're all connected too, right? How everything else is
Hmm.
connected. We really are connected. That's why, um, I mean, even just with the climate, that's why people feel things the way that they do, and why there's usually large numbers of people that experience the same thing, is because we
Yeah.
are connected in that way. But as far as the heart brain coherence, they talk about how the heart really is what influences the brain. And
Wow.
so with heart and brain coherence, it really, like if somebody is already doing breath work, it's something that's going to take, for instance, your breath work a little deeper. And that is connecting to your heart by like
Mm,
putting your hand on your heart and focusing on it and thinking, about things that you're grateful for and things that make you feel joyful. Um, and what I love about that is it brings intention to
yep.
what you're doing as well. Because I know a lot of times it's super easy to just go through the motions because, feeling like this is what I'm supposed to do or whatever the case may be. But a lot of times we could be doing something that's good for us. Um, for instance, like eating fresh, real foods. But if the intention and the heart behind what our brain is doing is fear, for instance, fear that like I'll get a scary diagnosis if I don't eat this way. Or if the intention behind it is shame because I ate like crap all weekend, right? The intention behind what we're doing matters. So
Hmm.
heart brain coherence brings the two together to make sure
Yeah.
that, the actions that we're taking also have our heart in a pure place behind it, because that's what makes things the most effective. So there's a lot of different techniques. I'm not going to go through them on here, but one of the quickest ones is to bring your heart into it. Um,
Mm,
and so whatever you're doing. So if your favorite thing to do is sing, and that is one of my actually calming methods, especially with my kids, is I sing their bedtime stories, or not
oh,
their bedtime songs. And So sometimes I'll sing them to myself. Sometimes if I need my kids to calm down, I'll sing them to them, or I'll hum them or whatever. But that's kind of just my go-to. It's what I decided is like the easiest thing to make me feel peaceful. Because one day I was thinking, I was like, gosh, I don't want to be so frustrated when my kids are throwing a tantrum or whatnot every single time. So I said, well, when our best times, and I was singing bedtime. And so I was like, I'm going to start singing their bedtime songs that I sing to them, to myself or to them or whatever in that moment. So that's one of my things. So that's just whatever your thing is, just always bringing your heart into it and focusing on your heart and focusing on what you're grateful for. And that truly does, that's a really good one. So if somebody is struggling and that's a method that they think they'd be interested in, there's a lot of different techniques. I am
Even like a
certified in it. So if
mantra.
anybody wants to, use
Yeah.
me to get help, or maybe I can make a
Oh yeah.
small course on it or something.
You should.
But
Absolutely. I say
yeah,
yes to that.
okay. But yeah, that's definitely one of the things that you can do just in that moment to really bring it all together.
Yeah. I think that's why
Yeah.
people love mantras too, because it's something, even if you're not a singer, that's not your thing, you can speak something that's going to bring that intention and bring that heart behind it and help you connect in a way and get more intentional, which is so good.
Mhm.
I don't want to keep you on too much longer, but I wanted you to just kind of share with people where they can find you, what services you offer, and where they can book if you don't mind.
Okay. So I do have an option to get biofeedback scans. You can book that directly from my website, but everything
Probably
else I do
not.
prefer. I Oh, you said hold on.
No, I said I'm booking I'm booking
Oh.
with you. Sorry.
For everything else, I do prefer that people email me. So my email is victoria@victorianeals.com, just because I can send an invoice for whatever it is. And a lot of times I like to chat with people to make sure it's a fit before they book something. But one of my favorite things to do is definitely functional blood chemistry analysis. And so looking at your labs and all of that fun stuff and helping with, um, recommending certain lifestyle and nutrition changes and all of that. Um, for personalized nutrition, I love helping with that and helping people figure that out, which there's so many aspects to that.
Mhm.
I definitely say the combination of what works best for your body, which sometimes can depend on genetics or how your body has adapted. It also depends on your current health status as well. I think sometimes people go for one or the other, or for their goals, for instance, like, oh, I just want to lose weight. So I'm tracking my macros and I'm aiming for
Right.
X, Y, and Z. But I think sometimes when we're aiming for macros, people forget about the micronutrients, which are super important, those vitamins and minerals.
Or just
So
calorie counting.
yeah. Um, so yeah, really focus on getting those nutrients, because that alone causes so many issues. Like a lot of my stuff, like protein deficiency was a big one for me. I've
Mhm.
never really liked protein until I learned I was significantly deficient to where it was affecting my body. And then all of a sudden I was like, give me all the protein. So, but it's just crazy, just the little things.
Yeah.
I mean, I love how a lot of times, people do intuitive eating, but if we're getting into the space of chronic health symptoms, we really can't do intuitive for a while. Like, we've really got to
Yeah.
track and look at the
Yeah.
nitty gritty details, because, there's imbalances here. So you've really got to look at the data to get that back on track. That's not something that really works for that method. And I know that personally, because that, if you consider years of just healthy eating and still ending up having significant health issues.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was especially like excessive carb intake. Like, I never even, stuff like that didn't even occur to me. I'm like, well, I'm eating healthy. Like, this is real food, but sometimes we eat too much or too little, or,
Yep.
so lots of that. Trying to think what else I have on there. My website. I do coaching, like if people want coaching for lifestyle changes, and really just helping people. I would say my favorite thing is, like, if you don't want to come to me for anything else, it's just helping you identify what's going on. So whether it is emotional, whether it is physical, whether it's a combination
Mm,
of both. Like, I've always been a digger. Like, I'm like, will research and look for answers until I find them. That's just a huge part of my personality. So it works really well for what I do now, because
yes.
I'm like, if you come to me, I'm going to treat you like you're me, and I'm not going to stop searching. Like, the amount of time I spend looking at client stuff is crazy, but it's important. So,
Hmm.
yeah, but most everything is on my website. But if somebody does have something they need help with and it's not, they can just email me. And so my email is victoria@victorianeals.com, and my website's victorianeals.com. So,
Wonderful. I'll
yeah.
have that in the show notes for everybody. So they can just go ahead and email you or click on your website and get to going on what services you offer and what fits for them. And so thank you so much. Oh, I feel like we need a whole nother episode just to talk about so many other things. It's just it's a huge need of understanding the connection between our body and our souls and our spirits and just everything that goes into it, of mind, emotions, and how that affects our body and how our body affects that. And so this was a really cool conversation to kind of break into the things that you can do to just help. And I think also, like, activating our vagus nerve, like that was something I don't know if I've ever like really focused on that, but I'm officially I'm officially doing some of those things twice a day. So thank you so much for being on here. Thank you. And I definitely have to bring you back on. We have to talk more for sure.
Perfect. This was so fun. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.